Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport, part 3 of 4 of our look at every Formula 1 driver who also raced in the DTM. We have looked at some absolute stars of Formula 1, such as Michael Schumacher, and some stars of DTM, such as Paul di Resta. It has become apparent to me that there are very few who were proficient at both. They either struggled in Formula 1 and did great in DTM, the other way around, or they sucked hard at both. Will that change on today's list of 14 drivers? Spoiler alert, not really. This is part 3 of 4, so make sure you check out the previous 2 entries to the series and subscribe so you won't miss the final part. I already did this concept for the BTCC. In fact, part 1 was the very first video on this channel, so check them out as well. And with that, let's jump into the video. Emmanuel Pirro. It's a shame Formula 1 never worked out for the Italian because he is a sports car superstar. He was a very capable single-seater racer, finishing 3rd in the first 2 editions of the International F3000 Championship for Onyx Racing in 1985 and 1986. In 1987 he became a test driver for McLaren during the Prost and Senna era. He bided his time in Japan and in touring cars and helped develop the Honda engine for McLaren, but he never raced in Formula 1 with the Woking-based team, instead making his debut for Benetton in 1989 in place of the injured Johnny Herbert. He would score 2 points for his best Formula 1 finish, a 5th in Australia. In 1990 he moved to BMS Scuderia Italia and spent the next 2 years struggling at the back with them, taking just 1 points finish. During the 1990 season he won on his DTM debut at the Nürburgring for Team Schnitzer and returned in 1992, taking a few podiums. 12 years later he raced in the DTM again, this time in an Audi, but he couldn't match his earlier successes and left to win just about everything in sports car and touring car racing. JJ Lehto. The Finn won the 1988 British Formula 3 Championship ahead of future Formula 1 champion Damon Hill and future Formula 1 race winner Eddie Irvine, amongst other star names. Lehto even tested for Ferrari in Formula 1, but instead made his debut the other end of the grid with Onyx, replacing Bertrand Gachot. In 1991 he partnered Pirro at Scuderia Italia and scored a miraculous podium, his best result in Formula 1. He stayed with the team for 1992, but it was a disappointing season, so Lehto moved to the new Sauber team for 1993 and scored points early on, but the season soon tailed off. He had his final drives in Formula 1 with Benetton in 1994, but a pre-season crash saw him injured and he missed races, with Jos Verstappen taking his place. Benetton ditched him and Lehto finished his time in Formula 1 with Sauber. He moved to DTM for the 1995 season in an Opel. He put in several good performances but never won a race. His best year was 1996 in the International Touring Cars for Keke Rosberg's Opel team. He scored several podiums and finished 5th overall. He did 2 more races in the new DTM in 2002 and has also won the 24 Hours of Le Mans and the American Le Mans Series. Alex Zanardi. One of the unluckiest men to ever exist, and I'm not talking about his racing career. After finishing runner-up to Christian Fittipaldi in the 1991 International F3000 Series, Zanardi ended the year in Formula 1, doing a few races for the brand new Jordan team, before a single race for Minardi in 1992. He got his first almost full Formula 1 season in 1993 with Lotus, taking his only point in Brazil, before not scoring points with Lotus in their final year in Formula 1. Zanardi went off to America and won the kart series twice, before returning to Formula 1 for one final try with Williams, and again failing to score points for that team also, a team that in recent history had been top of the pile. He briefly returned to America before losing his legs in a horrifying crash in Germany. He made a miraculous return to motorsport and even took wins in the World Touring Cars, whilst also becoming a Paralympic gold medalist in hand cycling. In 2018 he took part in the only 2 DTM races he would ever compete in, finishing in 5th place in a BMW at Misano. In the year since, he was placed into a coma after a cycling accident in 2020, and in 2022 his house burnt down. He now lives in fear of being cursed. Pascal Wehrlein. A couple of videos ago I mentioned Paul di Resta was one of 2 drivers to get a Formula 1 drive off the back of their DTM performances. Well, the other driver was Pascal Wehrlein. The German was just 19 when he made his first DTM start in 2013 for Mucker Motorsports. In 2014 he took his first win in DTM at the Lausitzring, and in 2015 he won the DTM Championship at just 21 years of age. He moved to Formula 1 in 2016 with Manor, and scored his first point at Austria, the only point for Manor in their final year in Formula 1. He moved to Sauber in 2017 and scored a couple more points finishes, but couldn't secure a future in Formula 1 and moved back to DTM for a single season in 2018. He couldn't match his earlier performances and has spent the time since in Formula E, first with Mahindra and then leading Porsche's Challenge, where in the last couple of years he has become a real title contender with 5 Formula E wins. Alan Berg. The Canadian was lucky enough to race against Ayrton Senna and Martin Brundle during the 1983 British Formula 3 season and even took a race win. I mean, technically he finished 10th in the race, and Brundle and Senna were racing in the European class and not the British, but technically Alan Berg won a round of the British Formula 3 in 1983, from a certain point of view. He stayed on for 1984, racing for Eddie Jordan, and finished 2nd overall, but a lack of funding meant no Formula 1 drive for Berg in 1985, despite testing for several teams including Tyrrell. He returned to Canada for 1985, and essentially had a year off. He managed to get the money together for half a Formula 1 season with Osella, which yielded a best finish of 12th in the German Grand Prix. After that, Berg's career was kind of sporadic, but he did race in the DTM in 1991. He raced for Tauber Motorsport in a BMW M3 and had a best result of 8th. After he struggled on for a while, but he finally retired after 2001. Johnny Giacotto. In 1975, Venezuelan Johnny Giacotto was a 350cc world motorbike champion. A couple of decades later, and he was a star of touring car racing in Europe. The multi-talented Giacotto switched to car racing in the early 80s, taking a couple of wins in European Formula 2 in 1982 for March. He finished 2nd in the championship behind Corrado Fabi, losing out by a single point. He debuted in Formula 1 a year later for Theodore Racing Team and scored his only Formula 1 point at Long Beach, which was more than his Colombian teammate Roberto Guerrero scored. In 1984 he did half a season for Tolman, but scored no points and broke both his legs in a crash, ending his single-seater career. He switched to touring cars, taking wins initially in the European and World Touring Car Series, before moving to DTM in 1988. He was successful immediately, taking 4 wins for Mercedes and finishing 6th overall. He switched to BMW for 1989 and continued to win races, finishing 2nd overall in 1990 behind Hans-Joachim Stuck. He'd finished 4th overall in 1991 and 1992, ending his run in DTM with 14 wins. He went on to win the Super Tourenwagen Cup twice and have successes in Italy but not Britain. He returned for 2 DTM races in an Opel in 2002 and has since retired from motorsport to watch his sons not really find any success. Johnny Jr. won races in GP2 and Jonathan was a race winner in Lamborghini Super Trofeo, but neither matched their father's glory days. Giorgio Francia. Yet another who didn't technically race in Formula 1, Giorgio Francia failed to qualify for Brabham in 1977 and Osella in 1981, but he was a Works Alfa Romeo mainstay for many years and had successful runs in both touring cars and sports cars. He came close to winning the Italian Touring Car Championship several times, as well as winning races in Spain. He raced in the DTM back in 1993 and 1994 for the Schubel engineering team in an Alfa Romeo 155. Francia managed to get a total of 7 podiums, but never the top step. Good enough for 7th in the championship in 1993. He retired from motorsport a couple of years later. Aguri Suzuki. It took Aguri Suzuki 9 attempts to win the Japanese F3000 Championship, finally winning it in 1988 after previously finishing runner-up 3 times. He was also a Japanese touring car champion. But outside of a few appearances at Le Mans and a couple in the International F3000 series, he didn't race much in World Motorsport until he raced in Formula 1. After racing in Japan for LaRousse in 1988, Suzuki joined Zack Speed for 1989 and it was a terrible debut season. Aguri Suzuki failed to qualify for every race as Zack Speed died a death. Suzuki spent the next 2 years with LaRousse and even took a famous podium at his home Grand Prix in 1990. He'd spent 2 years with the Footwork team, formerly Arrows, and made a few substitute appearances for Jordan in 1994 and Ligier in 1995. He'd finished 3rd at Le Mans in 1998, raced in Super GT back in Japan until his retirement in 2000, started his own Formula 1 team briefly, Super Aguri in 2006. So when did he race in DTM? Well, he did 1 international touring car race in 1996, finishing 11th before not starting the second race. Christian Klien. One of Red Bull's original drivers in Formula 1, Christian Klien raced for Jaguar first in 2004 before staying on with Red Bull for the next couple of years, sharing a drive with Antonio Liuzzi. He'd spent a year as a test driver for Honda and returned to Formula 1 for a couple of races with HRT in 2010. But that 2004 season with Jaguar would turn out to be his only full season. Same in DTM, he has the honour of being the first driver to race a McLaren in the DTM, and so far only, but that is set to change in 2024. He had a best finish of 5th in the 6 races he competed. Other than that, he has had a fairly average career of sports car and GT racing, still taking occasional wins in the Pro-Am class of the GT World Challenge. Gianfranco Brancatelli. The Italian also did not qualify for a Formula 1 race, failing to qualify for the 3 he entered with the very small Willie Carlson team and Team Mazzerio. He was a touring car ace, however, winning the 1985 European Touring Car Championship in a Volvo and the Macau Gaia race that same year. He was Italian champion in 1988 and he won the Spa 24 Hours in 1989. He took part in one season of DTM in 1989 for the Eggenberger Ford team in a Sierra RS500 Cosworth. He usually finished around the top 10, but he did take one podium. He had a few goes at Le Mans and the Bathurst 1000, and he started to compete less as the 90s rolled on, but he does still occasionally turn up in historic racing. Keke Rosberg. The 1982 Formula 1 champion would be a major part of DTM's history, as both a racer and a team owner for many years. It took a while for him to find success in Formula 1 racing for Theodore Racing, ATS and the Fittipaldi team, before finally joining Williams and winning the championship, and retiring after a single season with McLaren in 1986. After he retired from F1, he did a season of World Sports Cars with Peugeot in 1991, and then raced in the DTM, first for Mercedes where he had his best season, taking his only DTM win and finishing 5th overall. He spent 1994 and 1995 with Opel, but had a lot less success. He retired from racing, beginning Team Rosberg, which had raced in the new TDM from 2000 with Mercedes and eventually Audi. He has managed the careers of some of Finland's best drivers, such as JJ Lehto, Mika Hakkinen and his own son Nico. Pietro Fittipaldi. The grandson of the legendary Emerson Fittipaldi, Pietro is one of the many current young generation of Fittipaldis racing. He has been a Haas reserve driver for the last 5 years and still is in 2024. He took part in 2 Grand Prix for the American team in place of Romain Grosjean after his fireball crash in 2020. The year before, Pietro Fittipaldi had an unremarkable year in DTM in an Audi, scoring some points but only finishing 15th overall. He has raced all over the world, from Super Formula in Japan to his current home in IndyCar for Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. He is still only 27 and still has every chance of making it into Formula 1 in the next few years. Christian Fittipaldi. The cousin of Pietro Fittipaldi and nephew of Emerson, son of Wilson. God, a lot of Fittipaldis have raced in Formula 1. That's not to mention Max Papis, who has married a Fittipaldi and also raced in Formula 1. We've got Enzo and Emerson Jr. still to try their hand at Formula 1 yet. The 1991 International F3000 champion raced for Minardi in 1992 and 1993, and for Footwork in 1994. He scored some points, a very underrated driver, but he never got given a chance with a bigger team. He switched to the kart series in 1995 and took a couple of wins in his 8 years in the series. He'd go on to win several 24 Hours of Daytona and a couple of IMSA championships. He's had a lot of success in America, but sadly, Formula 1 just never worked out for him. Christian Albers. Our final driver on today's list is the Dutchman Christian Albers, still to this day the most successful Dutchman in DTM history. Max Verstappen in Formula 1, Christian Albers in DTM. They're basically the same. Christian Albers only won 13 races in his entire career, and Max does that every few months. The 1999 German Formula 3 champion joined Mercedes in DTM in 2001 for Persson Motorsport, and despite a tough year, he got a second place at the Sachsenring. After another difficult year with Team Rosberg, Albers moved to the HWA Mercedes and became a real title contender. He took his first win at Adria and finished runner-up in the championship to Bernd Schneider, only losing out by 4 points after a poor final race. In 2004, he finished 3rd overall and took his 5th and final DTM win and moved to Formula 1 in 2005 with Minardi. He scored his only points at the disastrous US Grand Prix when he finished 5th of 6 cars. Albers raced for Midland and Spiker before going back to DTM for 2008 in an Audi, but he scored no points after a few sports car races. He retired from racing in 2012. He was team principal at Caterham in their final Formula 1 year and is now a TV pundit. So they were 14 more race drivers who competed in both Formula 1 and the Deutsche Tourenwagen Meisterschaft or Masters. That is 42 drivers we have now looked at, and we only have 15 more to go. That video will be out in the next couple of weeks, so make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Who were your favourite DTM F1 drivers ever? More motorsport content incoming. So far we have no new drivers to add to this list in 2024, unless someone shocking joins the DTM grid like Yuji Ida or Nikita Mazepin. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.